Today, Donald Trump made his vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator JD Vance, and trust me, there's nothing unifying about JD Vance. Here's a video dropped today by the Lincoln Project.
The Lincoln Project salutes our fellow Never Trump activist, JD Vance. He led the way in opposing Trump in 2016, even calling Trump our Hitler.
JD Vance speculated that Trump might be America's Hitler.
Trump is the fruit of the party's collective neglect. I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical a-hole like Nixon or that he's America's Hitler.
Are you a racist?
JD joined John Kasich as the only major Republicans in Ohio to vote against Donald Trump in 2016, and he boldly told the truth about Trump voters.
We are, whether we like it or not, the party of lower income, lower education white people.
Trump is cultural heroin.
Fellow Christians, everyone is watching us when we apologize for this man.
JD Vance is a multimillionaire big tech banker with a degree from Yale, our kind of candidate. He gets it. JD Vance for Senate, the Lincoln Project candidate.
Anthony, go to my iPad. This was a tweet that JD Vance deleted where he said, Trump makes people I care about afraid, immigrants, Muslims, etc. Because of this, I find him reprehensible. God wants better of us. And not only that, JD Vance also said this, Mr. Trump is unfit for our nation's highest office. That's the guy who Donald Trump has picked to be his vice president. My panel at the Julian Malveaux, economist, president emerita of Bennett College, also an author out of DC, Amakongo Dibinga, senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service, American University out of DC, Long Victoria Burke, Black Press USA, Arlington, Virginia. Julian, I'll start with you. JD Vance, very much anti-women. He cannot stand no-fault divorce. Even said that if women were in an abusive marriage, they should have stayed for the kids. This is a godsend for Democrats because this is the kind of person who could help them drive their female numbers up.
Absolutely. I think this is fascinating. Of course, JD Vance has been slithering towards Trump ever since he said all those things in the Lincoln Project ad. He's been slithering towards him. Trump endorsed him when he ran for Senate. And so here we are. I think ideologically, he's most closely aligned with Mr. Trump. And so we've got a vice presidential pick who has said things about Trump that even Trump probably can't stand. But he's also said things about women. He said things about people of color, GBLTQIA people. And he's going to help Democrats, I think, in the long run. I also am salivating at the side of my mouth to watch him and Vice President Harris go at it. I mean, she will slice and dice him and serve him on a bed of lettuce, literally. He's a smart man. I mean, to Yale, that doesn't mean anything. So did Clarence Thomas. But, I mean, he's not a stupid man. And his book, Hillbilly Elegy, is an interesting book. Reverend William Barber says he doesn't tell the truth in the book. And I'm not surprised at that. That makes him even more closely aligned to Mr. Trump than we've said. But what he's done, Mr. Trump has reinforced, he's tried to slide to the middle with his reform platform, but then to pick this man is really to go all the way back to the right, and people know it, and they can lie their way out of it or try to lie their way out of it. People know what's going on here.
Here you have a 39-year-old U.S. Senator. He's only been there 2 years, Omakongo, and so I don't want to hear anything from any Republican calling Vice President Kamala Harris unqualified because this man has a very, very thin resume.
Absolutely. And this idea of being ready from day one, this man has no ability to do that. But they will use it, and they want to talk about, Kamala Harris being a DEI hire and now look at her extensive background. And we have to continually call that out just on the experience aspect alone that you bring up, Roland. But there's some other things that people need to be taking away from this. So you got the experience factor. He's inexperienced. Another thing is representative of the fact that the Trump campaign is not going to call for unity. He says unity, but it's unity behind me. right? That's what he wants right now. And so if you wanted unity, you would pick somebody like even a Doug Burgum, right? Somebody who does not have a strong history of this inflammatory rhetoric, of this ignorant rhetoric that goes against people, the women's conversations and stuff. Someone similar to that. Even a Marco Rubio who could appeal to Latino voters and other groups on many levels. But he didn't do that. He went with the MAGA extremist guy who said that if I was in the Senate at the time, I would not have certified the election. That's who that guy is. So, and lastly, I will say, this is another example, Democrats, of Republicans falling in line while Democrats are waiting to fall in love. We know how vindictive Donald Trump is, yet with all of these things that Vance said about Trump, this is the person that he picked. And so if we come out of this week still arguing over whether Biden should be the nominee, and still not suggesting other people, except for us who say Harris, then we are dooming ourselves. They have fed us on a plate an opponent that Democrats can pick apart on so many levels, and this is the time to consolidate. We've had the Democratic discussion. We aired the dirty laundry. People say it was necessary, but now is the time to consolidate and move forward.
Lauren, this is JD Vance talking about the effects of no-fault divorce.
And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids of those marriages. And I think that's what all of us.
Wow, Lauren, that's the person who wants to be vice president.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what the heck that was. The inability of this version of the MAGA Republican Party to mind their business when it comes to people's personal decisions is really incredible. And, to your earlier point, I actually think this is one of the most inexperienced vice presidential picks in a really long time. I have to go look at how long Dan Quayle was in the Senate, but this is ranking up there with this is Sarah Palin level in terms of why would you pick this person and what qualifies them to be a heartbeat away from being the president of the United States. We have a president, Donald Trump, a former president running again, Donald Trump, who's 78 years old and has a heart issue. So I'm not sure why JD Vance was picked, because a few of these other people, Tim Scott, Marco Rubio, they've been in the Senate much longer than JD Vance. So I'm not understanding that. The other interesting thing about this, of course, is that in this moment of time politically, Donald Trump is like the luckiest man alive for various reasons. The court case, and obviously, thank God, the failed assassination attempt on Saturday, which was he was inches away from being killed on national TV. So he's had a very lucky run. He's also lucky in his opponent in this particular cycle. And he makes this mistake today. I think this was a huge mistake for this campaign, because JD Vance is on the record saying a lot of things negative about Donald Trump. And everything is going to be replayed. And you couldn't have done that with almost any of the other people other than Marco Rubio that were on the list. On top of everything else, it's a double MAGA pick. You already have a MAGA person on the ticket, and his name is Donald Trump. You didn't need another MAGA person on the ticket. He was likely to win Ohio anyway. So this is a mistake. It is a huge mistake. And once people start talking about the record of the Vice President Harris, they're going to have to shut up pretty quickly, because he can't compete with her resume. So you want to talk about DEI picks and people who are not qualified? The person that Donald Trump just picked as vice president for his presidential running mate is not qualified, and people are going to bring that up.
Well, you say folks going to be playing stuff. He said, like us. Listen to this.
I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place. I'm going to vote third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
Well, again, that's what he had to say there, Julian. That was to NPR in 2016.
as you played it the second time, I'm like, well, let's play it 3 or 4 more times just so people really get what that man had said. He was a never Trumper, and all of a sudden now he's the vice presidential pick. Pundits, all kind of folks, Roland Martin, you got plenty of fodder here on JD Vance, and that's a good thing. Because in addition to, I think Lauren's point is very well taken about him being the least qualified. I think Dan Quayle may have been, this was the least, now he's the second least. But his qualifications are skimpy. Has he passed any legislation? Has he done anything? Has he led anything other than his pen to write his autobiography? So, I'm just sitting here cracking up. The sound bites there are going to be so many sound bites that he's going to have to run away from or lie about. Well, he's good at that. At least he's Trump's vice presidential pick. So they have lying in common. But he's going to lie. He's going to slither. Lauren is absolutely, he does nothing for this ticket. But guess what? That's good for Democrats.
Well, Omakongo, he ran for U.S. Senate in 2020 against Congressman Tim Ryan. He had to pivot to be a MAGA Republican. So he sucked up to Donald Trump. He was funded by billionaire Peter Thiel. He's a Silicon Valley guy. He tried to act like he's this white working class. No, dude, you're a tech bro from Silicon Valley. And so I fully expect him to be exposed further on the national stage by the Biden-Harris campaign.
Absolutely. He's a fraud. I mean, he's a chameleon. It's very Tim Scott-esque, although it doesn't look as performative in the way that he shifts. And I think folks in Ohio should be kicking themselves that Tim Ryan didn't win that election because, what turned out being what it could have been. But the fact of the matter is, every single step, there is nothing consistent about this individual. But hey, there's nothing consistent about Trump. And this solidifies the fact that this is Trump's party from top to bottom. Mike Pence ain't there at the convention because people still call for him to be assassinated, to be quite frank with it. And, this was the part, was it Don Jr. who said, Trump is the greatest Republican president in history? Well, their greatest Republican president used to be Lincoln and Reagan, right? But these are the guys that they're talking about now. So the party is 100% MAGA from top to bottom. All of the dissenters have been completely pushed out. And the sooner we get a grips on that, and the sooner we can start to actually focus on his record, I mean, just that the one about divorce alone, it's there, and there's so much of it. Doesn't believe in abortion in any way, shape, or form. And they asked, someone at the RNC chair today, what's the Republican? What are we going to do as it relates to the abortion? And they said whatever Trump wants. But whatever Trump wants is contradictory to what Vance said. And so again, they're hypocritical. They're doing anything for power, and they are showing that they are not interested in unity. They have gone with the white male ultra MAGA candidate. He's more MAGA than Trump, Roland. And that's who they went with. They didn't try to sugarcoat this in any way, try to find a Nikki Haley type or anything like that. And so the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can get back to the business of unifying the Democratic Party so we can beat these individuals, because there is no middle ground on this anymore. And quite frankly, there never was.
Lauren, I can't wait to see the immigration conversation, considering, go to my iPad, JD Vance's wife is the daughter of Indian immigrants.
Yeah, they'll ignore that and pretend it doesn't exist, or I don't know what they're going to do with that. I'm really actually surprised that he picked JD Vance. I really am. I was very surprised because they were sort of on a little bit of a trajectory to make sort of a change here. There's some interviews that Donald Trump did on his way from New Jersey to Milwaukee. He had 2 interviews, one with the Examiner, the other with the New York Post, in which it sounded like, to me, he was a little bit shaken up, actually, from what happened on Saturday, which one could expect that would be the case. You have a near-death experience, so now he's talking about unity. So now they're talking about unity on the floor of the convention in Milwaukee. So you then answer that by picking somebody that is not a uniting unity type of figure. You're picking a MAGA Republican who's more MAGA than Trump, and that is true. He is more MAGA than Trump. And so that doesn't really make sense. And what he says up there in his speech is not going to, unless they write the speech for him, are they really going to get serious maybe and change the speaking patterns of JD Vance, who, by the way, blamed Joe Biden for the assassination attempt on Donald Trump on Saturday, which makes absolutely no sense. And is bizarre. I thought it was a missed opportunity because a lot of other folks on the list that he could have selected, with maybe the exception of Marco Rubio, would have been a lot less MAGA. Certainly the Governor Burgum would have been less MAGA, and Glenn Youngkin would have been less MAGA. But when you pick J.D. Vance, that's like picking Tom Cotton. I mean, you're bringing in an extremely partisan individual, and the Democrats are going to have a field day, an absolute field day marketing against him.
You talked about that particular tweet that he sent out. This was the tweet that J.D. Vance posted on Saturday after the shooting in Pennsylvania. Today is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. Total, got 18 million views on Twitter. Total BS, Julian, because we know a right-wing Republican is the one who fired those shots.
Oh, absolutely. These people, but why tell the truth when a lie will do? I mean, they're trying to, this young man, there's a contribution in his name, but his daddy has the same name as does his grandfather, for $15 or some Democratic voter turnout group. So they're trying to say he's a Democrat. Well, first of all, $15. Secondly, do the math. The guy he's 20 now. So when this contribution was made, he was like 18, 17. So, I mean, it just doesn't hold up, and it's just not logical. But they'll do anything to try to smear the Biden-Harris campaign. And so J.D. Vance's language is inconsistent with Mr. Trump's plea for unity, inconsistent with everything we know about this shooting. It looks like this kid was a Lone Ranger. He didn't have any help. Quite frankly, without appearing to be silly. I mean, I had lunch with some sisters today, and we were all talking about, could this have been staged? That's a conspiracy theory. I don't necessarily believe in them, but this just seemed to be a little too convenient in so many ways. But again, J.D. Vance is going to put out incendiary rhetoric. He's going to try to blame Mr. Biden, President Biden, for this, and people just have to push back. The only problem is we've got this network called Fox, and they're going to be all over it. And there are some people who don't watch anything but Fox. They watch Fox and they're on X. And so, again, the bifurcation in the media is problematic unless there are ways to get people to essentially expand their horizons and look at other things.
Time to get paid, blow up like Fanbase exclusive audio rooms are here. Now tap, talk, and get paid. Monetize your live podcast and most engaging conversations. You can now create exclusive audio chat rooms only for your subscribers and biggest fans. And as a user, subscribe, listen, and talk to your favorite creators. Now tap, talk, and get paid. Because everyone's a fan of something, and everyone has a fan base.
And if you don't know